Hello guys, this is Jack, and today we're going to be talking about The Running Man. This is the new Edgar Wright film that just came out this weekend, and I was really blessed to check this film out a few months ago at a test screening back in July during my birthday weekend. And yeah, I kind of want to talk about this movie because some of the chatter behind the movie has been mixed, from a lot of Edgar Wright fans to people who actually read the Running Man book a long time ago and the movie from the 80s by Arnold Schwarzenegger. So I kind of want to talk about the reasons why I think this film is a little bit disappointing in my own eyes, and I also want to talk about the state of just how auteur directors are directing big IP movies and not having their own voice. But yeah, let's kind of get into this movie real quick. So with this new remake of The Running Man, you have Glenn Powell, who's playing Ben Richards, and he's a construction site worker, a working man guy. He has a wife, a kid who is sick and needs medications. So Ben decides to apply for the lower tier game in the corporation that is running these games. And from there, he does the training, and eventually the people who run the game decide to move him to the Running Man, which is the more violent and more lottery winning game, where basically you have about 30 days to survive in this game, and you have to, run away from all of these assassins and vigilante who are trying to catch you, and it's being live streamed across the world. And from there you have Ben, who is trying to hide from every single opponent that is trying to catch him. And from there, the film kind of goes into waves, where the first 30 to 45 minutes of the film is filled with exposition and filled with a lot of thrills, where you have Ben trying to run away from the city onto a place where he can hide. And from the beginning, I think Glenn Powell, his performance in this film is very leading man material, and I say that kind of in quotations because I think Glenn Powell is very charismatic, even though the character himself is basically angry the whole time, and to a point where it's just overly cartoonish and kind of just hey man, let's pull it back a little bit, because you don't need to be angry about everything. But he is the avatar of the viewers, and Glenn Powell, I think he's really committed to the bit. I would say the same thing with all the other actors in this film, especially Michael Cera, who only appears in 5 minutes of the film, and he's a weapons specialist who is really good with traps. And there's a whole Home Alone sequence in the middle of the film, which was really interesting, but also kind of gets to a point where the film kind of loses its steam well past that, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then also other characters that appear, like Josh Brolin, who is the game runner and the guy who's trying to manipulate Glenn Powell's character to, be more extravagant and more theatrical with the kills and the stuff that's happening in the game. And he also uses manipulation tactics to, make the game feel more real and also make the game feel a little bit longer than it should be. And then Coleman Domingo plays the announcer, the guy who is basically the flamboyant announcer guy who just brings the game into a full theatrical experience. And unfortunately, I think the film suffers a lot from tonal whiplash, where it's trying to be, an important film about our state right now in terms of where we're at in the world, but also at the same time, it tries to lean into camp with some satirical themes, especially when you're seeing some of the ads for the game and some of the TV shows that are running in the background while Ben is trying to survive the game. And there's a moment where he's watching the Kardashians, their version of the Kardashians, and it's pretty funny, but then it gets really serious quick, and then kind of just bounces back to humor, and it's just very all over the place, to the point where it suffers a lot from, what it's trying to say. And this is where the film finally, falls apart, when you get an introduction of Amelia Jones's character, who is basically a woman who is trapped in a hostage situation with Glenn Powell's character. And that's where the film finally just falls apart and starts to run its wheels, and then eventually the film just crashes and burns with a really terrible third act and final scene, which is one of the most, I think, not offensive, but I think it was just very beating over the head with the themes while also not trying to give more information about why that thing is happening at the end of the film. I'm not going to spoil it here, but I'll probably talk about it in the spoiler section in this video, but where it ends is just like very unsatisfying and probably one of the most baffling endings that I've seen in a mainstream film in probably a while. But yeah, man, like, first off, Edgar Wright, his direction in this film is very sterile. There is no inklings of any Edgar Wright-isms as far as like the fast cuts, the witty humor, the very vibrant like comic book style of like direction and editing. All of that is just completely gone. It's a very sterile, drab, studio-driven IP slop film, and you don't see any of like the Edgar Wright-isms that you would usually see in his films, like, you know, Scott Pilgrim, the Cornetto trilogy, and even Baby Driver. Like, all that is not in this film. It doesn't feel like an Edgar Wright film, and that's like the major problem people are highlighting as far as like people who really like his films, especially me. And honestly, I think the whole thing is just a way for him to just like collect a check so he can make original film out of his wheelhouse or in his wheelhouse. But I think here, watching this film, I was very frustrated with how the film was trying to pull all these themes of like anti-capitalism, fascism, and then just also the vibe of the surveillance state, but then also doesn't play too deeply into it. It just shows you what it is, and then it doesn't explain how the world runs or goes. It's just, okay, here it is, and then that's it. And that was very frustrating to watch. And I think also Glenn Powell's character, going back to like him being angry the whole time, it's way over the top, and it needed to be a little bit pulled back a little bit, have a little bit more like exposition with, you know, the flashbacks and whatnot. But here there's no flashbacks. There's like a big exposition dump in the beginning of the film with his wife and kid, and then the movie just goes, and it's just like, oh man, like, we could have had a little bit more time to kind of know more about Ben Richards' character without like the major exposition dump at the beginning of the film. But yeah, like, again, the whole film kind of just falls apart once we get to like the third act, especially with like Lee Pace, who appears in this film, who's basically just a stock villain in this. But yeah, I thought this movie was just very insufferable, very bland, very drab, and yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this. I give this a 2.5 out of 5. Probably one of the most disappointing blockbusters to come out this year. But if you don't really care about what Edgar Wright is trying to do here, and you just want like a silly popcorn movie, of course, yes, this might do it for you. But if you want something a little bit more thought-provoking that really kind of like speaks to what's happening right now in the current state of this world, I think One Battle After Another does a really great job doing that, because it is one of those movies that also has the same similar themes like The Running Man, but I think now more with a modernized sensibility. But yeah, man, this was not good. As far as spoilers go, spoiler alert, so in this third act of the film, you have the whole hostage situation where Ben takes hostage of Emilia Clarke's character, Amelia, and they're in like this Tesla car, and like the first, 10 to 15 minutes, like the girl is kind of like very ditzy and Valley Girl archetype, and she doesn't understand what's going on outside of the world, even though the game is being live streamed across the world and everybody's seeing what's happening. And Glenn Powell's character, Ben, decides to make up a hostage situation for the TV show, where basically he's going to pull Emilia Clarke's character into a plane by the station, and they're going to offer a little bit more money and more freedom to, beat the game, finish the game prematurely. And Killian, played by Josh Brolin, is just like, no, don't do that. We'll offer you even more money and also your own TV show, just like Lee Pace's character. And then Ben kind of like thinks about it for like a little bit, but then decides, nah, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to crash the plane. And yeah, he crashes the plane into the station. It cuts to black, and then a few, I think like months or years later, the new season of the game is running. And there's also like this weird subplot where a basement dweller is very into like the conspiracy theories of the game and has all of like the secrets and like techniques of like how to beat the game, and he distributes the whole entire information to the world to see, and that causes an uprising, which basically towards the end of the film, like the last scene, you see this uprising happening. People are believing that Ben is alive, and turns out he is alive, and he shows up at the studio, and from the last frame of the film, you see Ben taking his gun and about to like shoot Killian in the head, and then just cuts to black with the countdown of people cheering in the background, and that's where the film ends. And I think ending that with just like very like kind of just, what's the word I'm looking for? Just something to like give for the figment of imagination for the audience, I think doesn't work in this type of film, in my opinion. I think they should have just shown what happened and then kind of, you know, show maybe a few months later the downfall of this corporation. But instead, ending it that way pretty much derails the entire point of the film, the themes of the film, and just what it was trying to build up. And I think it wasn't like Edgar Wright's decision to do that. I think it was like the other writers who were attached to this film made it feel like that, because, you know, the studio was just like on their heads going like, we have to end it this way. We have to, you know, end this film, you know, with, you know, a warm ending instead of a film that's more complex and very, you know, nuanced. And I think having all that, you know, displayed in the end of the film just really derails the entire film as a whole. But yeah, man, this was just very disappointing. Again, 2.5 out of 5. I don't see any Oscar prospects for this, and I think Edgar Wright is in a dark hole right now. So hopefully he can pick himself back up with another film, maybe original film with his buddies, but for now, this wasn't a good film, and I think it's probably his worst film in his entire filmography. But yeah, man, that's basically it. Thank you guys so much. I will be doing more videos soon, hopefully Golden Globes predictions, you know, before the nominations come out pretty soon, but we'll see. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. Take care. Bye-bye.